Good morning.
Good morning, Rangada. Good morning, Rangada.
Yeah, so we are in the chapter Gnosis and Ananda. Okay, they are the two last planes of consciousness at the highest level. If you remember, if you divide the range of existence from the bottom to the top, you can divide in three ways, and the three ways are Annamaya Purusha or Annamaya Kosha, the material sheet, the vital sheet, and Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha. Then you have the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is the supermind. And then at the highest level, Anandamaya Kosha. So Sridhar is talking about the highest levels. Okay. Remember that these distinctions are not very precise because they run into each other. So he's clubbing them both together, Gnosis and Ananda. So now I start reading the where we have to read today. Okay, so this bion being of Purusha Prakriti is as if a flaming sun and body of divine light, self-carried in its orbit by its own inner consciousness and power, at one with the universal, at one with the supreme transcendence. Let's understand. First of all, the word Bayun. Bayun means double, but which is one. Okay? It is Bayun, twofold, but really one. Purusha Prakriti. That's why he has clubbed them together with a hyphen. Because at the lower levels, in the Annamaya Purusha, Pranamaya Purusha, and Manomaya Purusha, Purusha is different and Prakriti is different. Purusha is consciousness and Prakriti is Shakti, universal, nature. Okay, so they are different. But at the highest level, they become one. Actually, they always are one, but it is our consciousness which divides them and makes them as though they are separate. So, this Bayun being of Purusha Prakriti is as if a flaming sun. The sun is always a symbol of the supermind. In fact, the lower levels of consciousness, the higher mind and the illumined mind, these are often pictured as moonlight. Okay? So the sun is the highest, the supramental light, intense light. Okay? Flaming, simply saying, flaming sun and body of divine light. And body, note the word body, yeah? It is not something abstract. It is something very, very, the more subtle it is, the more concrete it is. Remember, that's a very interesting principle. The more subtle it is, the more real and more concrete it is to you. Concrete not to the senses, but to the consciousness. Okay, so this Bayun being of Purusha Prakriti is a flaming sun and body of divine light, self-carried in its object by its own inner consciousness and power. At our level, we are being carried by universal nature. Shakti is doing everything for us. But at that level, everything is being carried by itself. There is no need for any other intervention. It is itself. That's why using the word self-carried. It carries itself. At our level, our body is carrying the soul, our vital is carrying the soul, our mind is carrying the soul. But there, it carries itself. The consciousness is carrying itself, independent of anything else. Okay? Self-carried in its orbit by the own inner consciousness and power, at one with the universal. So, at one with the supreme transcendence. So, the supramental, it is transcendent and cosmic at the same time. That's what he's saying. Okay? At one and the supreme transcendence. Its madness is a wise madness of Ananda. Now that's an interesting, because madness, the joy can be so much that you become mad with joy. Even we have a phrase, na? Mad with joy. You can't contain it. It becomes so fantastic. Its madness is a wise madness of Ananda, the incalculable ecstasy of a supreme consciousness and power vibrating with an infinite sense of freedom and intensity in its divine life movements. Life movements, the vital movements in the body. Its action is supra-rational. It is not the action of the body and the vital in the mind, but the action of the mind, vital and body is originated from the highest level and you are being dictated to. You obey it like a puppet. Okay, that's what he's saying. Its action is supra-rational. It is not material, it is not vital, it is not mental. And therefore, to the rational mind, which has not the key, it seems a colossal madness. So, this is the ecstatic, ecstasy. That's why I think in the previous, just once again, in the yeah, that's right. In the previous para, we have spoken about the four, without mentioning the names, okay? Dances in the gusts and strays in the wild steps of an irresponsible ecstasy. He is referring to the Unmattavat, Pishachavat, Balavat, and Jadavat. So he is now describing the Unmattavat, madness. Okay, that's why though the ones who don't understand that, those who look at someone who is like that, like a mad person, actually it's a wise madness. For the normal man they will feel that he is mad. But there is no madness as such. It is a wise madness. Okay, you are so influenced by that tremendous ecstasy. Note the word simply flaming sun. Okay, that's the word he is using. So others don't understand that. That's what why he saying. There is one. Yeah, it possesses. Yeah. Incalculable. This madness is a wise madness of Ananda, the incalculable ecstasy of a supreme consciousness and power, vibrating with an infinite sense of freedom and intensity in its divine life movements. Life movements are vital. Its action is supra-rational and therefore to the rational mind, which has not the key, it seems a colossal madness. And yet, this that seems madness is a wisdom in action. There can be a wisdom in non-action at a higher level, but in the physical world, this wisdom becomes in action because you are in the physical body. And that only baffles the mind by the liberty and richness of its contents and the infinite complexity in fundamental. 1 minute. Mind, liberty and richness and in infinite complexity of infinite complexity in fundamental simplicity. So I'm so fond of oxymorons. It is, the ecstasy includes everything. So it is so complex and yet it's fundamentally very simple in its motions. It is direct. There is no complication at all. It is the very method of the Lord of the worlds, a thing no intellectual interpretation can fathom. A dance, this also, a whirl of mighty energies, but the master of the dance holds the hands of his energies and keeps them to the rhythmic order, the self-traced harmonic circles of his Rasa Leela. The Rasa Leela is the midnight dance of Krishna with the gopis. Okay, so this is what he explained. The Rasa Leela is a symbol of this mad dance. And where? In the midnight. Midnight means in the physical world where darkness reigns. Even there, there is a divine play going on. The Gnostic. And remember, when Krishna plays the flute, all the gopis run in madness to him for the Rasa Leela. The symbol is so clear. Siddha is expanding on the symbol. The Gnostic soul is not bound anymore by the divine demoniac, okay, by the petty conventions and proprieties of the normal human mind, or the narrow rules through which it makes some shift to accommodate itself with the perplexing dualities of the lower nature, and tries to guide its steps among the seeming contradictions of the world. The contradictions of the world are the dualities, and one who is in ecstasy doesn't care for your proprieties. Propriety, you have to behave properly in society, you have to be polite, you have to wear the proper clothes, you can't run about naked, okay? But all these things don't apply to the man who is in, or the person who is in the Gnostic Ananda. He can behave as he wants, irresponsibly, because he is not subject to the laws of the physical world, okay? The Gnostic, now note the language, okay? The normal human life are the narrow rules through which it makes some shift to accommodate itself with the perplexing dualities of the lower nature, and tries to guide its steps among the seeming contradictions of the world, to avoid its numberless stumbling blocks, and to foot with gingerly care around its dangers and pitfalls. The Gnostic soul, which is in Ananda, does not care to do all these things. It does not very carefully subscribe to the laws of society, politeness, okay, and proper wearing of clothes. All these things don't apply to it at all. Okay, that's what he said. Look at the language. Huh? Numberless stumbling blocks. It doesn't care to avoid. And to foot with gingerly care. Very interesting. You go on footsteps to see that you are not stepping on something wrong. Okay, gingerly care, very carefully on footsteps, on your toes. You are going to avoid all dangers and pitfalls. The Gnostic soul does not care for all these things. The Gnostic supramental life is abnormal to us because it is free to all the hardihoods and audacious delights of a soul, dealing fearlessly and even violently with nature. But yet, is it the very normality of the infinite and all governed by the law of the truth in its exact unerring process? So one who is there, all these things don't apply to it at all. All these politeness and superficial niceties. He's using the word propriety. Propriety has nothing to do with property. Propriety is the proper behavior. It has nothing to do with all. The supramental, this Gnostic supramental life is abnormal to us. We don't understand it because it is free to all the hardihoods, the difficulties, hardihood, and audacious delights of a soul, dealing fearlessly and even violently with nature. But yet, is it the very normality of the infinite and all governed by the law of the truth in its exact unerring process? It obeys the law of a self-possessed knowledge, love, delight in an innumerable oneness. It seems abnormal only because its rhythm is not measurable by the faltering beats of the mind, but yet it steps in a wonderful and transcendent measure. Now, Mother and Sri Aurobindo never behaved in an irresponsible manner, but there is no doubt about it that they experienced the utter ecstasy. But I'll give you some examples of behavior when you are in that Ananda and you contradict all the laws of the physical world, okay? All the social laws. Mother and Sri Aurobindo were fully controlled, okay? They are experiencing the ecstasy, but their behavior in the outward world was not madness, as he's saying, okay? Divine madness. They had the power to control it, okay? They didn't show it with all sorts of nonsensical behavior. But I give you two examples of Ramakrishna, okay, which contradict all social niceties, okay. You have to behave very nicely. One was his experience of the Divine Mother, and food offerings are always there in the temple. And Dakshineshwar, he was a priest, and he is there in front of the Kali image, and he is identified with Kali, and he's saying, he's offering food. He takes a laddu in the hand and he's offering. Nay, Kavi, here, take this, will you eat it? And then he eats it himself. Now, someone who is watching will think that he is a madman. He is offering to the divine and eating himself. But that is because he is completely identified with the divine. So his behavior is absolutely unacceptable to the normal man. Okay, this is one example. The other example is, okay, the case of Gopaler Ma. Okay, Gopaler Ma, she is a very interesting case where she is experiencing the divine as a child, her own child. We know very well that you can experience relation with the divine in so many ways. He can be a friend, he can be a guru, he can be a master, he can be your husband, like in Meera's and Catherine's case. Okay, Meera considered Krishna to be her own husband, and Catherine also thought Christ to be her own husband. And there are others who have also different types of relations. Krishna and Sudama, friendship. But this particular case is you are seeing the divine as your own child. Okay, that's why her name is not very clear, but the records speak of her as Gopaler Ma. And when she came to Ramakrishna, walking away from her poor hut, okay, when she came, she was carrying, subtly of course, not physically, she was carrying Balakrishna in her hands. But when she came to Ramakrishna, he identified himself with the divine child. And what did he do? What would a child do? He'll go and sit in the mother's lap. So here is this old lady, and here is this man who is much bigger than her. He goes and sits in her lap. So those who are watching this will think he is a complete madman. So this is what Sindhu is saying, that the one who is in that ecstasy does not behave according to normal human rules. That's what he said. And yet,
which Catherine are you referring to?
Which one? I am referring to Ramakrishna's story of Gopaler Ma.
Okay. No, I'm talking of Catherine.
Ah, she is a Christian saint.
Oh, she's a saint. Okay.
Yeah. She's a Catherine is a Christian saint.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, you can check on the internet. I think her name is Catherine, Saint Catherine. I don't remember exactly the date, but she also used to consider Christ as her husband. All relations with the divine are possible. But this relation of seeing the divine as your own child is very, very rare and beautiful. Wonderful. Okay, we go to the next paragraph. And what then is the necessity? So, who will read? One of you has to read. Shilpa has not read for a long time. Shilpa?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will read.
Okay, go ahead. Read.
Yes. Just a minute. Yes. I have to read from the. It does not.
And what then?
Check. Okay.
And what then is the necessity?
Okay. And what then is the necessity of a still higher step? And what difference is there between the soul in gnosis and the soul in the bliss? There is no essential difference, but yet a difference because there is a transfer to another consciousness and a certain reversal in position for each step of the ascent from matter to the highest existence. There is a reversal of consciousness. The soul no longer looks up to something beyond it, but it is in it, and from it looks down on all that it was before. On all the planes, indeed, the Ananda can be discovered because everywhere it exists and it is the same. Even there is a repetition of the Ananda plane on each lower world of consciousness. But in the lower planes, not only is it reached by a sort of dissolution into it of the pure mind or the life sense or the physical awareness, but it is as it were itself diluted by the dissolved form of mind, life, or matter, held in the dilution and turned into a poor thinness, wonderful to the lower consciousness, but not comparable to its true intensities. The gnosis has, on the contrary, a dense light of essential consciousness in which the intense fullness of the Ananda can be. And when the form of gnosis is dissolved into the Ananda, it is not annulled altogether, but undergoes a natural change by which the soul is carried upon its last and absolute freedom. For it casts itself into the absolute existence of the spirit and is enlarged into its own entirely self-existent bliss in infinitudes. The gnosis has the infinite and absolute as the conscious source, accompaniment, condition, standard, field, and atmosphere of all its activities. It poses it as its base, fount, constituent material, indwelling and inspiring presence. But in its action, it seemed to stand out from it as its operation, as a rhythmical working of its activities, as a divine Maya or wisdom formation of the eternal gnosis, is the divine knowledge will of the divine consciousness force. It is harmonic consciousness and action of Prakriti Purusha, full of the delight of the divine existence. In the Ananda, the knowledge in the Ananda, the knowledge goes back from this willed harmonies into pure self-consciousness. The will dissolves into pure transcendent force, and both are taken up into the pure delight of the infinite. The basis of the Gnostic existence is the self-stuff and self-form of the Ananda.
Describing the difference between bliss and the Ananda. So, the bliss can be experienced even in the level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness. But this Ananda that he's talking about is the highest level. And there is this sort of intense ecstasy. In one of the sonnets, Rendu is saying, I have drunk bliss like a giant's wine. Note the language, okay? Like a giant's wine, I have drunk it, okay? So, what must be a giant's wine? Even when you drink a normal wine, you are transported into a certain ananda. Okay, that's why people drink. But here he's saying giant's wine in one of his sonnets. Okay, so now let's read each sentence. Between the difference of bliss and ananda. And what then is the necessity of a still higher step, and what difference is there between the soul in gnosis and the soul in the bliss? Okay, the soul in gnosis is gnosis is supplementary, and the soul in the bliss, the gnosis and ananda, the chapter heading, he is making a difference between the two. There is no essential difference, but yet a difference, because there is a transfer to another consciousness and a certain reversal in position. Now note that, for at each step of the ascent from matter to the highest existence, there is a reversal of consciousness. So we'll try and understand this reversal of consciousness at the lower level, but as it keeps going higher and higher, the values go on changing. Okay. So at our level, for instance, I feel myself to be in the cosmos, right? I am in the cosmos. But when you go to the spiritual level of consciousness, the cosmos is within you. The in becomes the out, and the out becomes the in. So there is a reversal, total contradiction. This was saying. And this contradiction, very understandable, from level 1 to level 2. You become You are in the cosmos and the cosmos is within you. It's a reversal. All values change. Okay. So, but now at the higher levels, also there is a reversal, but not so easy to understand. So he's saying at every level there is a reversal of consciousness. Values go on changing. We can understand in that way. Okay? Values go on changing. In fact, Mother says that because when she had the experience of the supramental boat, okay? I recommend all of you to read that supramental boat experience of Mother's. She says that all the values of our normal consciousness are completely, they have no validity at all in the supramental world. Okay? I'll just give you one, maybe a little glimpse of that we can understand. At our level, we have good and bad. Okay? But at the highest level, there is no good and bad. If Mother has to judge who is fit for entering into the supramental, she is not seeing whether they are good or bad. She is just seeing the color of the aura of the person is telling her that she is ready or not ready. The golden color, which is there, the supramental color, we know there is a golden orange, no? Like the some sort of that hibiscus, the Orville flower. That is the orange gold. That is the supramental. And she sees that there is a yellow, then you are not fully ready. You are still in the mental world, because mental is yellow. So purely from the angle of color, so complete change of values. There's no good and bad there at all at the highest level. They're just the shades of colors. So this example, we can understand what we mean by reversal of consciousness. Okay. And Srimba is saying that at every level there is a reversal of consciousness. The values of the physical world are not valid in the spiritual world. The values of the spiritual world are not valid at the supramental level. Okay. Mother says that very, very clearly in that experience of the supramental world. It's a highly interesting experience that she had, 1958. You can, I think if you go to the internet and type Mother's experience of the supramental boat, you will get the whole text. It's really worth reading. Do that. Okay. Then, the soul no longer looks up to something beyond it, but is in it, and from it looks down on all that it was before. So it's a summit. Above the summit, there's nothing. You don't need to go in it. From there, you are looking down. There's only a down, not an up. That's what I'm listening. On all planes, indeed, the Ananda can be discovered because everywhere it exists and is the same. Even there is a repetition of the Ananda plane in each lower world of consciousness. We have discussed this many times, that even in the lower planes, one can get a touch of the higher planes. That's what Srimba is saying in other language. So even in the higher mind, you can get touches of the lower mind. You can get touch, even a touch of the super mind. You can get that. Okay? On all planes, indeed, the Ananda can be discovered because everywhere it exists and it's the same. Even there is a repetition of the Ananda plane in each lower world of consciousness. As we said, we have described, they run into each other like the rainbow colors. They are not absolutely separate. Although you can distinguish the colors, and yet they run into each other. Okay? But in the lower planes, not only is it reached by a sort of dissolution into it of the pure mind or the life sense or the physical awareness, but it is, as it were, itself diluted by the dissolved form of mind, life or matter, held in the dilution and turned into a pure thinness, wonderful to the lower consciousness, but not comparable to its true intensities. So what is he saying? Very clear. He's saying that the highest level, it's a flaming sun stuff. But as it keeps coming down, it is there in the lower planes, but it's sort of reduces its intensity. It is diluted and it gets dissolved in the form of mind, life, and matter, and held in the dilution and turned into a poor thinness, which is wonderful for the normal consciousness, but nothing to do with the highest levels. And turned into a poor thinness, diluted very much. However diluted the divine Ananda, if you experience it in the normal consciousness, it is fantastic. That's what I is saying. It is wonderful with the lower consciousness, but not comparable to its true intensities. The gnosis has, on the contrary, a dense light of essential consciousness. And there is a footnote explaining. Chit Ghana. Okay. It's a consciousness which is concentrated. Okay. Total concentration. Concentrated consciousness, in which the intense fullness of the Ananda can be. And when the form of gnosis is dissolved into the Ananda, it is not altogether annulled, but undergoes a natural change by which the soul is carried up into its last and absolute freedom. So he's making a small difference between the Gnostic consciousness and the Ananda. The Ananda, complete dissolution of all forms, even the Gnostic form completely disappears. For it casts itself into the absolute existence of the spirit and is enlarged into its own entirely self-existent bliss infinitudes. He's using the word bliss, but he means the Ananda plane. The gnosis, that's a supramental, has the infinite and absolute as the conscious source, accompaniment, condition, standard, field, and atmosphere of all its activities. It possesses it as its base, found, constituent material, indwelling and inspiring presence. But in its action, it seems to stand out from it as its operation, as a rhythmical working of its activities, as a divine Maya. There is also another footnote, or wisdom formation of the eternal. So, divine Maya, let's see what he's saying. The footnote, not in the sense of illusion. He's saying you have to use the word Maya, not in the sense of illusion, but the power of the divine to make forms. But in the original Vedic significance of the word Maya, and all in the Gnostic existence is real, spiritually concrete, eternally verifiable. So the word Maya, as we discussed, the lower Maya is illusion. Then in the middle, the Maya is the power of the divine to create forms. And at the highest level, Maya is the sheer power of the divine. Shakti, Parashakti. Okay, that's the word Maya. That's what he's explaining. So he used the word Maya, but he's explaining. Divine Maya. The wisdom formation. Look at the word formation. Creation. When you create a form, he is calling it, and it's coming from wisdom. Therefore, wisdom formation of the eternal. Gnosis, the supramental, is a divine knowledge will. Knowledge will, Chit Shakti. And he has said earlier, Purusha Prakriti, with a hyphen. Here he is using the word knowledge will with a hyphen. Knowledge corresponds to Chit, and will corresponds to Shakti. Okay, of the divine consciousness force, again with a hyphen. So you can use three words: wisdom formation, knowledge will, conscious force, Purusha Prakriti, or Chit Shakti. All are equivalent terms. Wisdom formation. Formation is making forms, and wisdom is the supreme knowledge. So note interestingly how he's using different words meaning the same thing. Wisdom formation. Knowledge will. Will to make forms. Wisdom, knowledge. Knowledge is also coming from consciousness. So consciousness force. And you can also use the words Prakriti Purusha. Okay. Full of the delight of the divine existence. In the Ananda, the knowledge goes back from these willed harmonies into pure self-consciousness. Now we talk about the Ananda plane, not the Gnostic. Then Ananda, the knowledge goes back from these willed harmonies into the pure self-consciousness. The will dissolves into pure transcendent force, and both are taken up into the pure delight of the infinite. The basis of the Gnostic existence is the self-stuff and self-form of the Ananda. So he is putting Ananda even at a higher level than the Superman. So Ananda, no forms, nothing. Even the will disappears, knowledge also disappears. Only Ananda is there in that world. And therefore the Superman is the Gnostic experience, is a self-stuff and self-form. In the Gnostic experience, there is stuff and there is form. But it is self-form and self-stuff. And the Ananda, everything disappears into sheer Ananda. So that's what he's saying. 8:30. So we have got 5 minutes. We can maybe read the next one. How big is it? Oh, it's quite big. So shall we leave that for the next time? I don't think we can even finish reading it. So we'll leave it for the next time, okay? We've got 4 minutes, but
I think we'll read it next time, so then there is continuity.
okay then.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice
Thanks,
day.
Rangana.
Okay.
Thank you, Rangana.
Okay.